Welcome to Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living. Join me, Chris.
And me, Jacqueline, for real conversations about life, death, and everything in between.
Learn to connect with your intrinsic power to grow and heal, how to laugh at your own humanness and not take life too seriously.
Through healthy conversations between the feminine and masculine, you learn how to harness the power of relationship and the mirror to befriend your shadow and to trust that any obstacle that gets in your way is there to help you grow.
Together, working at a practical level, you'll learn to trust that everything that is happening is for you, your growth, and ultimate freedom.
Our circumstances don't matter. It's only how we relate to them that does.
Get ready to befriend the wisdom of your body and the power of your mind.
Break Free and Trust starts now.
Welcome to Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living. I'm Chris.
And I'm Jacqueline. And on today's show, we're going to explore how our unconscious definitions of love, or the mood of unlove that permeates our culture, gets in the way of our capacity to be unconditionally loving with ourselves and each other. We will explore how the masks we wear to gain love as a matter of survival as children get in the way of our relationships, and how parenting can become a powerful way to observe them, let them go, and create spaciousness for ourselves and our children. All of this and so much more in the next hour.
There's a lot to unpack from what you just said there in that intro. Maybe I'll ask you to start by maybe expanding on this idea of masks we wear to gain love as a matter of survival as children. You know, what do you mean by that? What do we mean by that?
So it's interesting. I think one of the best ways to express this is really to ask the question. And the question might sound something like, do you remember a time as a child where you were told that you were lovable exactly as you were?
I don't.
And you know, I feel like I have inklings of that, memories of being told that actually by my mom. But at the same time, I have so many other memories. And those memories look like being taught that there's certain aspects of ourselves that aren't welcome or that need to be hidden. Parts of ourselves like our feelings. So stop crying. Don't be mad. Don't be scared. Why are you so happy? Aspects of our personal expression. Don't be so loud. Shh, be quiet. Stop being so bossy. Aspects of our physicality, like you're too fat, you're too skinny, you're too short, you're too tall. And then looking even at our achievements, like you're not as smart as your sister. You're not working hard enough. You're not playing hard enough. All of those things. And so these messages that we get, which, you know, most of them are innocuous in terms of their meaning, but the way that we internalize them has us put on different masks and establish different ways of being so that we can be accepted and loved by our parents in particular. And then that moves on to our parents, our teachers, our friends, etc. And so we wear these masks to have those pieces of us not seen because we internalize them as not being good enough.
Yeah. And, you know, and I jokingly said, I don't remember being told that. I'm sure my parents told me that many times, as parents do. But yeah, in addition to the, you know, the things we need to say and achieve or want to find that parent's love, many of us have grown up in a home with massive emotional dysregulation in it. And it's not even just the actions and that, but it's the mood of the parent. Like what's happening with them is translated as us as children as it has to do with us. Am I doing something that makes me not love because my parents angry or they're dysregulated or things like that? And all that's going to pour into this way that we see the world and what we try to do to get the love we need. And it may not even be logical, maybe reacting to something that has nothing even to do with us in the first place.
Most of the time they're reacting.
Yeah.
Based on whatever's going on in their own nervous systems. And actually, whatever's going on in their own nervous systems that they internalized as children too. We're all walking around wearing these masks. It's not because we become parents that all of a sudden our masks go away.
Yeah.
And so, yes, we are often trapped in this circle of reactivity.
Yeah, and as a child, everything that's happening, we take on as it has to do with us. We don't quite have the understanding that, it's outside of us. It must be me. That's why this is happening.
Yep. And with that comes all kinds of behaviors, right? Like, if I'm perfect, then I won't upset mom or dad. If I please everybody, then I'll be responsible for creating harmony and nobody will be upset in my environment. And so we internalize these voices and develop these ways of being in the world that ultimately are exhausting for us because they're actually keeping us from the essence of who we really are. We're too busy playing the roles we think we're supposed to play.
Yeah, the essence of conditioning. This particularly in this inspect. This if we were going to get love, we're going to belong, we're going to fit in. This is the rules that we've decided we need to follow.
And what we don't realize for the most part is that most of these things are very unconscious. We don't even know that they're going on until we get triggered by something and our reactions don't match what's happening in that given moment. And we're given a window, if we choose to take it, into an awareness that something else is going on with me. So, one of the teachings that feels really significant and important to me is this idea that if there's any kind of reactivity in my system in relation to another human being, then I actually need to be personally responsible for that reactivity. And what that means is there's something inherently going on with me that has me reacting, which means it's actually not about the other person at all. So, what does that look like? If you and I are sitting in the grocery store, we're standing in the grocery store, and we're in line at a cashier. Um, Cashier's taking her time. Maybe she's brand new and doesn't know the codes for everything. And I'm in front of you. And I'm getting really, really irritable and reacting to the cashier. And you're standing behind me having the exact same experience. And yet you're whistling, you're looking around, you're smiling. The cashier is doing the same thing, but both of us are having entirely different reactions. And I'm making this up, but let's say I'm reacting because I'm feeling incredibly disrespected.
Mm-hmm.
She's not paying attention to me because something in my history leads me to a place that if I'm not being paid attention to, then I'm of no value and I'm not worthy. And all of a sudden, my reaction is coming from a place like that. Whereas you have an entirely different experience and you're going to respond to the situation differently. So, a big piece of this work is in recognizing that the conditions that we put on ourselves to be lovable, these unconscious definitions of love, actually get in the way of us being able to receive the love or take in the world as it is, but instead we're taking it in through these distortions.
Yeah, and what else you hear is saying is there's nobody that's immune to these. Everybody is part of growing up. It's part of the general human condition that when you come into the world, there's a need to survive, and it's a strong word for it, but it's true. A need to survive our childhood to become an adult, and that means getting along and navigating our family of origin, our culture, or whatever it is, and finding a way to navigate that where we're getting the safety we need, the love we feel we need, and the security we need. So it's true that all of us are going to be conditioned in some way or form. And the question is, can we recognize it? And how is it now manifesting in, I think the second part you talked about in the introduction, into our relationships, which is where we're very likely to see this conditioning showing up in a major way.
Well, the beauty of relationships, if we can take them, if we can receive them the way I believe that they're probably intended, is that they're perfect mirrors for us to be able to actually see ourselves. We spend all of our time in relationship looking outside of ourselves to the other, to creating blame and shame, etc., in order to preserve this very fragile, actually, ego structure
Yeah.
has been created and has lived with us since we were quite small. The one thing that I want to sort of add on before we move into relationships is this idea that, you know, this this conditioning that happens, it's not just for attachment purposes. It is for attachment purposes. We need to survive, and in order to survive as really young humans, we need the love of the people that are caring for us. But there's another thing going on as well, which I think often actually gets overlooked, and we speak about it as it relates to adults, but I believe that it actually starts when we're quite young, which is our nervous systems. We are geared, we're programmed actually, or we're built is a better way of saying it biologically, to move towards pleasure and away from pain. And so if we're experiencing a dysregulation in our nervous system and our internal world does not feel okay, we are going to establish ways of being to bring that into a place where we feel okay, which means I'm going to put masks on, to be somebody different, to act differently, not just so that I can gain the love of my parent, but so that I can calm myself down because I know how to be with my discomfort. And then what happens as we move on through our lives is that we spend most of our life continuing to avoid that very discomfort and to protect the fragility of what we experienced in that moment by developing these big ego structures around us. And the very love that we seek, we're actually blocking because these masks are in the way of our ability to receive them.
In a sense, what I hear you saying is that, like, this ego structure, which is part of general human conditions, which is necessary, it does start out as a survival mechanism, and it is, but at least based on how we live our lives now, it morphs into something that's effectively seeking pleasure and trying to avoid discomfort across all dimensions.
Yes. And when the ego stops working for us and it starts to get in the way of our relationships and it starts to get in the way of not just our relationships with other people, but actually our relationships with ourselves, then we can continue to choose to follow its very poor guidance,
Mm-hmm.
or we can choose to begin to unwind those masks. But that path is a hard one. I'm not gonna lie. Like it's, when you start to do this kind of work, as you know, all of a sudden you start to tap into places of deep insecurity, places where deep fear lies, places where you're sitting in an adult body, but you're responding like a very young child. And in order to be able to be with that, we need to develop ways of, one, containing it, and two, being able to move out of judgment and self-criticism and into deep compassion, because that's what that child needed in the first place.
Yeah, I think you know the and that's on an individual basis. And just I'm thinking as my mind's working as we talk about this, and what we talked about as well is there's this sort of this collective patterning that goes on with it. Is that, as you point out, as the child comes into this world, they're confronted with their parents who may not have worked on any of the things you're talking about because it's difficult, and all their conditions are then downloaded onto that child. that then grows up as it downloads that condition on their child, and that's considered normal. And I think you referred to it sort of this mood of unlove is actually developing. So, and even in addition to this hard thing you're talking about of looking at yourself, it's just so outside what is normal in terms of how we move through life, in terms of how the family system works.
Yeah, but the challenge is, and just to qualify, the mood of unlove is not my term. It's a term that John Wellwood speaks to a lot. I love his work, actually.
Yes, that's a cool term.
Yeah, I like it. Because he says that the mood of unlove permeates all relationships and actually is the source of all relationship challenges. And that mood of unlove is the relationship that we ultimately have with ourselves, and how our core wounding is getting in the way of us believing wholeheartedly that we are lovable. Yeah. You spoke to the idea of it's so outside of what's normal. What's normal isn't working.
Right.
Right? Like the way in which we interact with each other on a daily basis, as humans in our culture is, well, it's horrifying, really. We're warring with each other all the time because we're warring with ourselves all the time. And so while this work is difficult, it's essential if we're going to get to a place where we can meet each other with unconditional love.
Yeah, and that's another way of saying like it's yeah this put normal in quotes. It's what's normal is what leads us to a world that has love with conditions. It's a world of conditional love, and that's I think actually what most people would confuse what love is. Oh, love is this thing of condition. I do this for you, you do this for me, and as long as you behave in these certain ways, I'll love you, and if I behave in these certain ways, you'll love me. And so, yeah, it's normative, and this is what it leads to. But of course, that's not unconditional love. That's a whole different paradigm. And as you point out, our world of conditional love doesn't appear to be very peaceful.
It's anything other than peaceful, right? I think for most of us, what peace actually is something that we don't really understand. You know, this process that we're working with talks a lot about how peace is something that we look for. If these happen, if these two things happen, then there's peace. If we change this, then there's peace. If you do this, then there's peace. But ultimately, peace is actually something that exists all the time. We're just in the way of.
Yeah.
Right. And so a piece of this protective armor that we wear is actually the very thing that's in the way of us being able to be at peace, because being at peace means being okay with what is in this moment rather than needing it or wanting it to be otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because that place of peace on a map of consciousness, which you've talked about lots, it's effectively the highest emotional state, but it's available to us all the time. It's not, again, it's like these emotional states aren't things that we have to go and collect and get or build. They're just states we choose. And all of this other stuff that we're talking about gets in the way of peace and unconditional love, which are very, very related.
So I love that word. It's something we can choose, but I don't think that for most people that choice is obvious, right?
Yeah. It's a theoretical choice.
I actually think it's really a practical choice. I think every moment of every day, we have the opportunity to choose peace or choose conflict. And choosing peace actually means turning inward and choosing to look at whatever it is that is creating discomfort in me when I'm with you, to be able to turn to myself, to be able to do the work, to be with that discomfort rather than reacting toward you. So when I go back, if I went back to that example in the grocery store, in that moment, as I start to get reactive in my body, I can choose to discharge it because it's really uncomfortable and the cashier is taking a really long time. And I can make her day really shitty by reacting all over her. Or I can choose to notice that I'm getting really reactive and meet that reactivity with a breath and go into my car and spend some time working to quiet my nervous system so that I don't react to the next person I see. I think the whole point of all of this personal development work that is rampant all over is to be able to get to a place where I become a witness of myself or an observer of myself. And becoming an observer, I'm able to actually create a pause. And in that pause, direct my energy where I want it to go rather than operating out of my conditioning.
Yeah, I think when I made the comment, it's theoretical. I think I only mean it in the sense that this idea that I'm going to be completely at peace all the time, nothing's going to affect me. It's like it's a great place to aim, and I think we should aim there. And what you're talking about is the practice of getting there, and it's right. It's like a daily practice. It's like I in fact I would even say that I've adopted that as my daily spiritual practice or my sadhana. Every moment of every day becomes an opportunity to practice moving towards or aiming higher towards unconditional love to peace through all these interactions and relationships. Right? Every time something happens, every happening in my day is an opportunity. Can I move towards unconditional love? Can I move towards peace? It's now this opportunity. The more I practice it, the easier it becomes. Just like going to the gym and lifting weights. There's no impact at first, but after repeated experience, suddenly there's results. And that's like with any practice. And the more we practice it, the more we understand it, the closer we get to it. Um,
Well, I was just going to say, you are incredibly adept at that. As I've said many times before, far more so than I am. Um, I'm still a fiery ball of passion, and in that, my reactions are still quite present. My ability to recognize them has increased tremendously. And actually, I would say, as I was saying on a call with some of my students today, um, it's becoming more and more and more uncomfortable to be in a place of reactivity in my body because I know what the other feels like.
yeah.
And so that experience creates more discomfort than the experience of actually turning toward myself and going, huh, I feel really sad right now. Or I'm feeling really insecure right now. Or wow, in this conversation, I feel really small. Owning that has become easier than putting on the armor that gets in the way of me feeling that. The armor now feels really constricting. But I would say, of anybody that I have met, you're masterful at this piece. How'd you get there?
Mm. There's the route I took is effectively is this route of the root of suffering and pain, in that whatever was within my conditioning that I was completely unconscious to and aware of, it took me to a place that I've talked about in this podcast before that ultimately ended up in an alcoholic and addicted bottom. And it's from that place of maximum pain that I had two choices. I could keep running on my conditioning, which was going to take me to death, or I could choose to take a hard look at what that conditioning was and see if it could be changed and see if it could be altered. And I had that gift of desperation and the motivation to look into and explore and examine rigorously what what is my conditioning? Where does it come from? What are my actions and behaviors? What are my fears and limiting beliefs? Um, can I look at these things? And then, hopefully the next step, could I muster up the courage to drop them and let them go and have faith that I would be able to survive without them? Because all of my conditioning was a survival mechanism. All of it. It was all what had got me to that place in life, which up until everything fell apart, it it seemed to be working pretty well. But I had to have the courage to let go of them and to have the courage to recognize, well, if I let go of these, I might not fit in, I might not belong, I might not get all the love I've needed because that's why, or I thought I wanted because that's why I had it. Everything, I might lose everything that matters to me if I change all these conditions. But I was already at a place where I'd lost everything. So it became a bit of an easier decision, but it was still tremendously hard work. And that's where the start of this came from.
And so that work has you really looking at all of the armor and stories and distortions that you had internalized in order to keep you safe. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as deep as I can get into that, like, and even understanding, but not getting caught up in what the origin story is. So yeah, I had an alcoholic mother, and that's where a lot of it came from. She did her best. She didn't want to be an alcoholic. I get that. And I'm not blaming my mother, nor does that help. But what kind of survival mechanisms does that create as a child growing up with an alcoholic mother who, again, for things outside myself, she's acting a certain way. I think she doesn't love me. And now I think I have to do all these things to get the love I need. And she's not even capable of it. And that just distorts my view of what love is and what parenting is and what everything is, beyond my imagination. And I'd spent I got out of the household and thought I could just ignore that for the rest of my life without any repercussions. And I realize now that's not possible. It gave me a very distorted view of what love was, what relationship was, what life was. And as I got in and started looking at these things, I could really see where the conditioning had taken me down a path, and then find the courage to dismantle it.
And so this work in dismantling it really looks like coming back to this place where there isn't any separation, armor, protection around you, but actually you're looking into the mirror filled with all of your insecurities, filled with all of your fears, filled with all of the behaviors that you've used to protect those. And now you actually have to be with them.
Yeah.
It's one hell of an uncomfortable ride.
Yeah.
Hey.
And I have not only just be with them, I have then become full admission that the pain that those defensive mechanisms have caused all these people in my life, be fully responsible for the damage they've caused, own up to it, and not pretend they weren't there, and then find a way to let go of them. Maybe we can get into that after the break.
Okay.
Okay.
Welcome back, everybody. So just before the break, Chris, you were talking about forgiveness. And it was about forgiving yourself for all of the ways in which your armor had created pain for those around you and for yourself. Do you want to finish that thought?
Yeah, I will. And I think, just as I was sitting in the break, realizing there's sort of a vital step that for me, anyways, that was crucial that I missed in there was, um, to have the courage to, you know, or to be able to let go and be willing to let go of this conditioning that had got me to this place and had been my survival technique. It was going to leave me totally exposed, and I needed to find something to believe in to be able to do that. I had to find my faith in this moment. I had to find my spirituality, and I had to like find a power greater than myself that, I was going to trust was going to get me to the other side of this thing, because I was taking all the masks off and taking all the armor off. And I just want to point that out because that was a very critical, absolute necessary step that I had to take, and I still take today.
You know
But
what?
with
I remember, I just want to interrupt you for a
Yeah,
second because the first time that not the first time that we met, but the first time we spent any time together, You took that to whole new levels. I mean, you took every mask off that you could possibly take off to be exactly who you were, and you had to have had a tremendous amount of faith to be able to do that.
Yeah, and it's a big part of this work for me is that I believe in that the most important thing I can do is maintain rigorous honesty from this point on. I didn't have it in my past in my conditioning. That was part of my, my spiritual malady, but now I have to have it. And I know I can have it because I have faith in a benevolent God that's or a creator that's watching out for me. And I know when I'm honest and I'm truthful and I follow the path of truth, it can be as uncomfortable as hell in the moment. It'll always work out at the end. So that's a big part of this. And in the sense that comes into this forgiveness piece too. As I said, when I step back and I look at my conditioning, see its origin story, see how it developed, and then saw how it made me act in the world. In a sense, I can just sort of see I was running on this bizarre program that wasn't so much my authentic self, but something layered on top of that. And I could see where the actions came from. I could take responsibility for them. I could ask for forgiveness from other people who I've hurt. But ultimately, through that process, I could finally learn to forgive myself. And when I learned to forgive myself, there was the magic of the whole thing. I actually learned to love myself for the first time through that, right? Really recognizing that this forgiveness is actually the path to unconditional love. And as I forgive others, I unconditionally love them. As I forgive myself, I unconditionally love myself. And this is sort of this path to wholeness. And then so much of my daily practice now, or how I move through life, is when things happen, when other people do things that activate me, I simply look for ways to forgive them. I think, like, I wonder what's going on with them. That cashier, man, she's probably new. She's probably stressed out of her mind right now. She's probably having such a tough day. I better be nice to her. What can I do to help? Like, that's where my mind goes now in this, because I've been there. I've been on this side where my conditioning and my self will ran riot without me knowing it. I know what that's like. And I know everybody out there is all trapped in this some way or another. And they're not acting necessarily from their place of unconditional love, which they haven't accessed yet.
Yep. I hear you, and it brings up something else for me, which is this idea of one of the practices that I use consistently is a practice called Ho'oponopono, and it's an old Hawaiian healing technique. And in it, the major assumption is that if I am activated in your words in any interaction, then it's a sign that there's something within my body, within my
Yes.
channel, that is unintegrated, that hasn't been looked at, that is likely being protected. And that the only thing that I am responsible for doing is clearing my channel. I can't change somebody else. Although when we clear our channels, we do inevitably affect change. But the only thing for me to do is actually to turn inward. And so in that moment, in this practice, there's words that are repeated, and you repeat them over and over and over again. And the words are, I'm sorry. And it's, I'm sorry to the part of me
Yeah.
that I didn't care for or didn't give space to. Please forgive me, is the second word, for disregarding you. I love you unconditionally, exactly as you are. And thank you for releasing me from this pattern. And you repeat those words, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you, over and over and over again as a mantra. There are times in my life where I've repeated that mantra probably 10,000 times a
Mm.
day. And there's something really powerful about it, because if our internal world is totally driven by what's happening outside of us, we actually have no real power to create any change. If, however, our world is really driven by what's happening inside of us, then we have absolute capacity to shift our state of being and to move toward a state of peace.
Yeah. You know, in all of this, in the past several years that I've done this, I've come to see my understanding of the world is simple. I've come here to learn to love unconditionally. That's the meaning of life. There's no other meaningful objective ultimately. There's the other stuff's all a distraction. And if I see that as the meaning of life, then all the wonderful people that are put here on earth are just simply here to help me with that. Right? There's this saying, recognize the other person as you. Um, and the other way I look at that is sometimes is just say, I remind myself I'm really the only one here. And this, it's I go on a little tangent here, but in all of my, my trying to understand the nature of reality, and all these spiritual systems all lead to the same place of non-duality, that we are one with the creation. But also that's the conclusion of quantum physics, that it's actually all just one consciousness. It's taking a different form. And it's, the problem with something like quantum physics and actually the concepts of God and spirituality is we're not really actually meant to be able to understand them. We can sort of intuit them and feel them. But one of the ways I like to look at it is like we have 37 trillion cells in our body, individual cells, but they all somehow understand they're all working together as part of the same body. They're not competing with each other and fighting and having conditions on each other to do things. And sometimes they do, and it's called cancer, and it kills us and remove it. But the other 37 trillion cells in our body are all acting as one. Well, that's what all this is. And you and I are one. You and all the listeners out there, we're all one consciousness that's been individuated, reflecting things back at each other for one purpose, to teach us all to be an unconditional love. And that just changes the way I relate to everybody.
So we'll come back to this idea that you spoke earlier of a benevolent universe. A benevolent universe or a benevolent God doesn't mean that we're going to love everything that happens to us.
No.
It means that everything that's happening to us is for us. And so all of these beautiful people that you're speaking to, many of whom are messengers, or who Michael Brown says are messenders, we have two options. One is to meet them with our fight, and the other is to recognize that they're actually just mirroring to us aspects of ourselves that are longing to move out of the darkness and into the light, out of the shadows and the cupboards that we've shoved them in, and into the totality of their being. And the opportunity in doing that is that life becomes an incredible exercise in coming home.
Yeah. And there's this idea that there's only coming to consciousness with some degree of pain or suffering. So again, we're not going to like the message we get that's actually going to help us. It's just much like when I see my personal trainer at the gym. I don't like it when he asks me to do Bulgarian split squats. They hurt. I hate it, but I know they're good for me. And that's this path too. The stuff that we probably have the most resistance to and challenges the most. It is the stuff that's actually trying to help us to grow the most. And we push it away and we try to seek pleasure. And we don't end up in a place of unconditional love. We end up in this place of unlove.
And I don't even know, there's sometimes where we're not even pushing it away or suppressing it to seek pleasure or to avoid pain, but we're actually, in a lot of ways, working to survive. Right? Go ahead.
I was going to say, so you asked me that question about what got me to foster sort of the path I'm on. And it's the limit story, right? Of like the big bottom. That it's not everybody's story, and it's not practical. One of the things you talked about in the opening, which is how parenting can be a powerful way to start observing our conditioning and these types of things. Can you do you want to expand on that? Because I think it's brilliant.
Sure. Yeah, I've been sort of pondering this whole idea for the last couple of weeks about parenting, and something became very clear to me that I had never really thought about before. So I'm sure I'm not the first to think about it, but actually, just to say something funny about that is I once, when I was doing my practicum in psychology, I had all of these thoughts that I thought were so brand new and exciting, and I wrote them all down, and I went and took them to my clinical director, and I was like, I think I just figured out a new way of looking at psychology altogether. And he was like, it's brilliant. And Ullman developed the diamond approach many years ago, right? So there's no new thought. But here's what I've been playing around with. We talk about parenting and this incredible capacity to feel unconditional love for a child when they first come into the world. They do nothing other than pee and poo and cry and need to eat. And yet something about them we all see as perfect. It's a perfect baby. And what I didn't realize until very recently was actually the opportunity that parenting brings, which is not just an opportunity to feel unconditional love, but as that baby turns into a young child, and actually as the baby's a baby, there's something happening from their side to us, which is we are getting an opportunity to re-experience, maybe for the first time, what it feels like to be unconditionally loved. Children love their parents. When they're young, we can do no wrong. They look to us and think that we are amazing. And we miss, I think there's a place where we actually don't catch that experience as an opportunity to heal something in ourselves. We go about our lives, we're busy raising, doing the things that we're meant to do with our kids. And then we get to a place where they grow up and they start to individuate. That's where we are in our home right now, where there's 3 teenagers, almost a 20-year-old, and they start to individuate and they start to really push you away. And they start to not want to hear what you have to say. In fact, they don't even really want to hang out with you. And all of a sudden, what we get, I'll speak as me, what I have begun to re-experience is all of the conditions, the unconscious conditions that I had placed on what it means to be loved from childhood. So I'll give you an example. This past weekend, one of our kids is home from school, from being away. I'm so excited to get to spend time with the kids. I go out of my way to make this really beautiful breakfast because I really want to shower them with love. What I don't realize is I'm also really wanting to feel love. And this is where, when we're talking about getting honest and getting real, this is the kind of stuff that we're talking about. So when I say to you, I'm realizing that I also wanted to feel love, that's not something I could have ever admitted to myself, God knows how long ago.
You're just doing it for them. That's it.
Yeah, it was all for them. Everything was for them.
All
But we don't
self-sacrifice.
realize that actually so much of it is for us.
Mhm.
So my son Jude asks for homemade banana pancakes. And I'm like, yes, you've given me a way to show you love and you've given me a way to feel appreciated, right?
Yeah.
And so off I go.
Eagle loves it. The eagle loves it.
or I think it will. And I go and I make banana pancakes and I make this giant plate that looks so beautiful. I even put powdered sugar on it. And what happens? He takes them into the other room with his iPhone and goes away. And you just sort of sit there and you're like, oh. And I had this moment where I recognized that what I was doing, there's a part of it that was for him, for sure. As a mother, nourishing and nurturing your kids feels good, regardless of how they respond. But there was this place where I recognized that for much of the weekend, I was hunting my kids. I was chasing my kids. And it may have been quietly inside of me, but that's what I was doing. And I was looking for my kids to reflect love back to me, only for me to recognize, actually, oh, wait a minute. These are your patterns of pleasing, of overperforming, of doing all of these things that are yours from childhood that you have yet to work through. And here they are showing up in the place where you're most vulnerable. And what an incredible opportunity for me then to sit with myself and go, oh, I guess I still have some work to do here, right? And I think that what happens with our kids is we act out these unconscious definitions of love over and over and over again. And we do it from the time that they're young. And so now I'm sitting in a place where one of the kids is struggling. And my unconscious or subconscious reactions are to want to go and make everything better, to want to jump in and do whatever I can to make that pain go away, because that's what I knew how to do to make my own pain go away. And as we move into this space of unconditional love, what I'm coming to really understand through experience is to ask the question, what would unconditional love do now?
Mm.
And when I ask that question is create a spaciousness to show this human being that even in the face of deep struggle, they are loved exactly as they are, and that I'm here to witness, to hold, and to be present, rather than to reflect that something's wrong with them that needs to be fixed. And I think that if I could go back in time, which I can't do, I would parent really differently than I did. At the time, I thought I was doing the best that I could with the knowledge that I had. But as I look now, it's interesting. Somebody actually said to me the other day, called me and asked a question about whether I had a referral for them for their 5-year-old child who was acting out in terms of a therapist. And I sat and I thought, and I was racking my brain for the people that I could refer them to. And I stopped and I actually looked at her and I said, you know, I'm going to speak to you as a woman rather than as a therapist. And I'm going to say to you that from everything that I've learned, rather than going to find somebody who can fix your kid because there's something wrong with your kid, go see your own therapist.
Yeah.
And do your own work and recognize what's getting in the way of you being able to love your child exactly as they are. Because that's the work. And that's the gift of parenting, I believe, is that as long as we have kids that are alive and kicking, whether they're 3 or they're 19 or they're 43, our work isn't done. And the work is not done in terms of parenting them. Our work is not done because our kids are beautiful mirrors to us of where we're still getting in our own way.
Yeah, that's
Right.
that's amazing. It just even your, even since the last time we talked, I mean, that was the weekend. Today's a Wednesday. Your, you know, your self-reflection on, what was coming up within you is deepened. Like really taking an opportunity to look at the we'll call it the pancake incident as as this reflective tool. Yeah, where was I placing, where were you placing conditions on that? What did I want something in return? The pancakes weren't a free and clear transaction, is what you're saying. There was an expectation of something back from it, and you can see it now.
I would say actually that in some ways they are a free and clear transaction. but there's a deeper learning behind them as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And when
they can be both. It's just which which are they, right? And that's if you can let go of the condition, it's still given the pancakes with all the love in the world, and just like, oh yeah, there's a condition that I'm sensing. Can I drop it and just give the pancakes? That's unconditional love in a pancake analogy.
and there's freedom in that place.
Total freedom. You don't want.
So much room in that place. And I don't know, like the deeper I move and through my own process and my own healing in this work, the more I recognize, as you were saying, there's so many messengers here. There's so many possibilities over and over again to ask ourselves that question of what would unconditional love do here? And it's not just what would unconditional love do here for my interaction with my child or my interaction with my friend or my interaction with a client or with you. It's what would unconditional love do here for me as well.
Yeah.
And in that moment, when I woke up really early in the morning to rush downstairs, to make breakfast, to demonstrate love, what I could have done was actually spend another 15 minutes in meditation or in practice, sitting with the discomfort that my way of loving my kids up until this point doesn't work anymore. It's the same way that as a mother, if you breastfeed, for a good year, 2 years, however long it is that you breastfeed, there is, when there's struggle, you have something to give your kid to soothe them.
Right.
And then all of a sudden that doesn't work anymore. And you have to find a new way. And I think we have to keep recreating that as our kids get older and as we grow as people, to be able to recognize that we need to shift and we need to grow. And in that, we need to dissolve the very things that are in the way of us loving unconditionally.
Yeah. And you brought in the word freedom and unconditional love. And without conditions is by definition freedom, because you're free from expectations of what has to return. And then you have freedom just to love. And it's just giving this love away into the world. And to come back to sort of the way I see everything is it's all just one. I'm just loving myself anyways. And that's why that feeling is so profound in us when we just when we do love without conditions. I'm just giving it away and I don't want anything back. It's like, oh my God, my container is so full now. How did that just happen? Well, because it's sort of in a sense, it's cracking the code of the universe. And, and kids, I want to just mention this too, because I don't want to leave the listeners the illusion that unconditional love when it comes to our children is just let them do whatever they want to do. Right. That's not the case. There's a tension between we need to help them grow up and survive and be adults in the world and love them at the same time. And sometimes those two things can feel like they're at odds with one another. And it's just asking yourself the question, as Jacqueline said, what would unconditional love do here? And part of that's being parent. And just asking the question and bringing the awareness to it, all of that, it just aims us in the right direction. And that's a really good start.
And I just want to end with that. That was a great way to actually bring this to conclusion, is to say that parenting and unconditionally loving don't need to be separate things, but we need to be able to let go of our rigidity as we parent.
Yeah.
Be able to welcome some flexibility, because unconditional love is flexible. It's moving. It's not stable and stagnant. It shifts and it changes. And as we move through our experiences with our kids, it's really important that the question of what would unconditional love do now is primary, rather than what do I need my kids to do now?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because that's control.
Yeah. And we don't know the answer because it's their life. And we only can see through our own conditioning.
Because we're their messengers in the same way that they're
That's right.
ours. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us today. It feels like this conversation could go on for a long time, but maybe we'll come back to it another time. I hope you have a good couple weeks, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, everyone. You've been listening to me, Chris.
And me, Jacqueline, on Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living.
Tune in every second and fourth Monday at 3 p.m. on Transformation Talk Radio for more real conversations about life, death, and everything in between.
Learn to connect with your intrinsic power to grow and heal, how to laugh at your own humanness and not take life too seriously.
Through healthy conversations between the feminine and the masculine, you will learn how to harness the power of relationship and the mirror to befriend your shadow, and to trust that any obstacle that gets in your way is there to help you grow.
For more information or to connect with us personally, visit theway-healing.com. That's theway-healing.com.